Say hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3, towards the end of day 3 of Marjoram. I'm Lauren. I'm your moderator for today's session. A few keynote or key housekeeping items. I'm sure you've heard all these already a couple times today, but yes, this session is being recorded, and you will get it via email after the event. If you have questions, post them in the Q&A tab. And also don't forget to join our session chat. Have fun, throw some GIFs or icons or emojis or whatever you feel like in that chat, and then we'll answer them as we go through the session. So I will hand it over to Adam Erstelle and let him dive into our topic today.
Thanks, Lauren. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around for 3 long days of Marjoram. It's getting to the end of Friday. Hopefully I can not put you to sleep, but we've got some hopefully good tips for getting started with Data Cloud. As always, with any conference, we really need to thank our sponsors. If you haven't checked out the marketing resources inside of the event app, please do so. Check it out. They have some really, really cool solutions. Today, we're going to get through 5 tips on getting started. Organizational alignment, picking a use case, some success metrics, leveraging out-of-the-box data models, and then being intentional with what you're trying to build. We're going to get right to it. No Data Cloud fluff. Straight into our first tip. And with the world that we're living in now, data management, there's a lot of data that's out there, right? You have data that's coming from identity platforms, purchase platforms, tickets, right? Visiting your website and mobile sites or apps and all, like just so much data that's out there. And recently there was some study published that's predicting that there's going to be 100 zettabytes of data in the cloud. Post in chat if you know what a zettabyte is. Hint, it's a lot of data. Now, granted, at least half of those 100 zettabytes are cat videos, but you know, there's still an immense amount of business data that's available to us. And what we need to do with all that data and bringing in a data cloud or something like that is we really need to make sure that the organization is going to buy into it, right? And not just buy into it, but we need to think about who's going to own it. And with all that data in a bunch of different places, it can get challenging to see, okay, what's the right department to own Data Cloud, right? Not too different from the discussion in chat that we've had with who's going to own Salesforce, who's going to own some of these wide-reaching tools. Now, it can be, you know, a center of excellence. It can be your digital or marketing teams, right? In almost all implementations, all of the groups that you see on screen, they're going to be involved in the implementation and in the success of rolling it out. But you still need to have one owner, right? And it really will depend on the organization, but you have to look at which group is going to be the most likely to drive this forward and to find success. So now let's say you have your business alignment, you have an owner, right? The next thing you need to do with a data platform, and this hopefully doesn't come as a surprise, is you need to figure out where's your data coming from, right? Is the data going to be good quality? Is there enough data coming in, right? And for each of those records, how complete is the data? Right? The last thing we want to do is bring in a whole bunch of garbage into yet another platform and then amplify that garbage and try to do something with it, right? It's just not going to work. So part of the prep work there, and with Data Cloud, this is almost half to like 3/4 of an actual implementation is, you know, getting your data in line, figuring out your plan. And that might mean, you know, coming up with spreadsheets for data dictionaries if you don't already have it, looking at your relationships, right? How does a contact relate to an account? Now, that one's obviously established, but there's going to be other examples of that, right? Then for each data stream or small group of data, you're going to want to figure out what kind of stream is this? Is it profile information? Is it engagement information? Is it just like supporting information? That type of category really matters inside of Data Cloud. Another thing I want to call out that Data Cloud is a system of reference, right? It does not become a system of record for any of the data that's going in. Salesforce CRM is still going to be the system of record for your CRM data. So, all right, that's enough with tip number 1. Tip number 2, picking a use case. In other Data Cloud sessions.
Hey, Adam, I'm sorry to jump back in. I don't know if you're sharing your slides, but I don't see them. So you want to retry sharing?
All right.
Sorry about that, guys.
No one posted it in the chat. I was not sharing my slides. I'm sorry about that.
I thought it was mine, but we're good. Thank you.
All right. So for our second tip, it's going to be picking that use case, right? And what I mean by that is there's a lot of use cases that are possible with Data Cloud. There's a lot that might overwhelm us. What is the 1 or 2 use cases that will really drive further adoption within the organization? And there's this quote that I read from some famous author that suggests that we start with the end in mind, right? What's the goal? What's that North Star that we're driving towards? Now, when we're thinking of that from an implementation, right, there's a series of steps that you'll go through for, frankly, any implementation in the world for software, right? And when we're thinking of beginning with the end in mind, we want to start at the end of this path, right? What's the value? What's the thing that we're trying to drive, right? Then from a design perspective, we start working backwards. Well, okay, in order to see this metric, what are some of the computations that we're going to have to do, or some of the calculations? How are we going to, what data do we need to drive the calculations to get to measure the value? And you start working backwards from a design perspective. That'll help you build your blueprint, help you come up with the information that you need. And then you can actually start executing these steps in order to build all the things in order to accomplish that value. So I mentioned there's a bunch of use cases here, and we have some on the screen here, different categories. And what we find is usually for that first use case or 2, right, it's usually going to be a use case that drives some sort of team optimization, right? Maybe you're saving a lot of time creating a report, or saving a lot of time and getting a particular segment put together with a few different data sources, right? So being able to save that time is often a really good use case, saying, hey, we implemented Data Cloud, we're saving, 10 hours a week on doing this particular use case. It's shown immense value. Let's keep going with Data Cloud and start picking some other ones. Other teams who see that success, hopefully will get a little bit jealous, and they're going to want in on that action, and there'll just be a lot more positive buy-in across the organization. Now, it can't solely be, saving time, right? We still want to drive some sort of positive value to the rest of the organization. Hopefully it's some, increased revenue or increased customer satisfaction, right? So you want to have something else that, adds to your use case. But picking one or 2 of these, limiting the scope of your initial implementation, that's going to be what helps you find success. All right, tip number 3. We've picked our use case, right? How are we actually going to measure that that Data Cloud and executing that worked really well, right? And you can go ahead and Google, implementation metrics, or what are the things I want to measure to see if a piece of software is providing good ROI. And you'll get a list very similar to this, right? You can measure your data integration quality. You can measure KPIs. Hopefully nothing on the screen here is novel or surprising. And, they are a little bit generic, and you might think that I might have used a little help to get something like this put together, and you would be exactly right. But if we want to measure the success of a particular use case, right, that's going to be different metrics than measuring the success of an implementation or measuring the success of an actual product. So how can we entice other teams to want to pursue Data Cloud for their either department or business units, right? So like I was saying earlier, something that matters to the team. It can be operational efficiency, it can be anything, right? But that's very likely to be something that'll help drive the adoption across the team. It can be business measurements. Some of the popular ones with Data Cloud are lifetime value, right? Maybe you're pulling it across a few different e-commerce systems or order systems, right? Pulling in that disparate data, harmonizing it to a single value, saying, hey, Adam spent $3,000 on cat accessories last year. I didn't really, but let's just roll with it. It can also be marketing metrics, right? This is a marketing conference. It would be silly to not look at, how can we measure a use case, which is hopefully or likely backed in a marketing use case. It can be your campaign ROI. Did it bump up over the period of time that you had this particular Data Cloud thing put in? Maybe it's lead conversion. It can be any of these, but figure out what are those key things, simple metrics that you can just highlight across, saying, hey, this is what we did. You should do it too. All right, tip 4, leveraging the out-of-the-box data model. In Data Cloud presentations, and maybe if you're lucky enough to be in some demos, they'll show you how easy it is to map data, map fields from wherever it's coming from into what Data Cloud can work with. And when we're looking at doing that, right, the information on the left might be from your raw data source, so to speak. Maybe it's coming from Salesforce, maybe it's coming from Marketing Cloud, maybe it's coming from an Azure database, right? Doesn't really matter, but it helps you take the information that came from your business and mapping it into what Data Cloud can work with. And, CRM or Salesforce Core, it gives you custom objects. Data Cloud's the same way. And in both of those solutions, as much as you can, and it makes sense to stick with the out-of-the-box objects, you really should try to do that. Not only does it help from a scalability and extensibility perspective, but third-party system or third-party applications that might come out after, maybe there's going to be some new Data Cloud App Exchange apps, right? They're going to be working off of the same core objects. And if you're thinking today about using those, it will accelerate your value in the future once those App Exchange apps are available. Now, with that said, you don't want to, pound that square peg into a round hole. There's going to be some situations where it really makes sense to have custom objects. And again, in Data Cloud, that's 100% possible. Now, when we're thinking about data, right, we need to align it like I was mentioning earlier, but Data Cloud works in a little bit more of a normalized approach than we're used to in Sales Cloud or Service Cloud, where it's a little bit more flat. So it makes sense that we have to do just a little bit extra mapping. And not only do we need to normalize it, right, but we have to, in some cases, we might need to transform it. And what I mean by that is, you might have a single contact record with multiple email addresses, right? And that's a denormalized record. It's pretty flat. You have lots of attributes on a single record. In Data Cloud, you're going to want to split that so that you have a record for each email address, right? So there's tools inside of Data Cloud to help you with that transformation and getting it into the right fields and the right schema. Excuse me. Now, when we're thinking about data coming into Data Cloud, we really need to understand that there's a split between ingestion and mapping, right? So they're completely different steps. You start off with the ingestion, right? Let's bring the data into Data Cloud. Once it lands, it's going to be turned into something called a data lake object. And from there, you can map that to the fields that are available in your data model object. And it's the data model objects that Data Cloud has a standard model. It's got a bunch of diagrams on the website, far more elaborate than we wanted to show here in this presentation. Once you've, highly technical term, once you've smashed all that together, you got it, lay it out nice inside your data model objects, that's when you can start doing some of the features that we hear about with identity resolution, segments, activation, etc. Sorry, chat got me distracted. All right, so we got our organizational alignment. We have our data coming in. Everything's looking pretty good. What are we doing with it again? Right, and this is where we're going to want to make sure that we're being intentional with the data that's coming in. Right. There's a few different ways that we can do that inside of Data Cloud, and we want to make sure that we're picking the right tool in order to accomplish that, hopefully one or two use cases that we're working with. Right. So if it's from a analytics perspective, we have a few platforms that we can do this with. We have some calculated insights, which will let us sum up or figure out what that one metric is that we're going to want to associate with someone. This is where lifetime value might work, or age that the contact has been with our organization. There's a few that you can come up with. You can use Tableau to just browse and do all of the fancy things for exploring your data. And you can also leverage that data inside of Marketing Cloud Intelligence. Now, if you're looking for something beyond just analyzing and visualizing your data, right, you actually want to act on it, right? That's where you would have Data Cloud segments or segmentation, right? That lets you look across all of your different data sources and say, I want to find customers that have made a purchase in the last 30 days without any support cases and that have hit the website. So that's cool for grouping and getting a list of your population. But maybe you want to activate it. Maybe I want to send that to a Marketing Cloud data extension. Maybe I want to send that to one of my ad platforms so I can start targeting them with ads, right? Thinking through what that use case is, what the end goal of it, actioning your data is going to be how you move that data around. Now, with all that said, there's also some really cool things with Data Cloud around AI, right? You can use either Einstein Studio for building your own model, or you can bring your own model using SageMaker and a couple other tools too. Now, with data actions, it's a specific feature in Data Cloud that lets you actually action your data in real time, right? So information that's flowing into Data Cloud in a real time way, that can be a Data Cloud objects. It could be coming from the mobile and web SDKs, right? It might be actual streaming data, maybe from the website, right? That streaming data, live record changes, those are the things that you can use to drive data actions. Now, maybe it's like through a flow and you do some interesting things. You might be able to enrich the data before you send it out to a chatter post or a Slack message, right? Some really interesting things that you can do with these data actions. And a lot of times when Salesforce is talking about the real-time nature of Data Cloud, this is specifically what they mean. Now, when we're thinking of activation, right, this is where we might take our segments in a batch approach and send it to Marketing Cloud or an FTP location, right? And it's basically building your lists and plopping them somewhere. It's the marketers that are usually going to use this and, take that information and either use it in an ad platform or, send an email out to them. But that's usually what is meant when we're talking about activation within Data Cloud. Data actions, like I was just mentioning a little bit earlier, this is more the real time. If you think of a river, right, as data changes in the stream, you're able to act on it in a real time way. Typical users here are, sometimes it's engineers or your data team, right? Because they really understand the nature of the data, how it ties together through the various systems and timings and all that fun stuff. When you're working with a data action, you don't really have access to all of the rest of the information that's in Data Cloud. So the scope of the information or the water that's flowing through the river, it's a lot more focused and specific. So for a tips recap, right, we want to be very clear on what we want to do in Data Cloud, right? Pick that one or two use case that's going to really show off the success and the power of the platform and hopefully make other team members jealous and help like snowball the desire for it inside your organization. Being intentional, right? Going in with a plan. Now I know, there's a free Data Cloud right now, kind of like a trial. And I don't know how many other people here in the session have signed up for a free trial with, full intent of proving something out, and then something shiny rolls by and then the free trial kind of gets wasted. I know I'm way too guilty of that. Same thing with Data Cloud. Right? You have a free trial. If you're going to go with it, make sure you have a plan, you know what you're going to do, and then sign up and execute on it. Make sure you have that organizational alignment, right? Which team's going to drive it? Which teams are supporting it? Is everyone bought in? Is everyone kind of excited, hoping to see that success from the first couple of use cases? Are we sure that we can measure it? And then lastly, that data model. Make sure as much as you can, stick with the out-of-the-box data model. It's quite robust. I would argue it's even more robust than the Salesforce core data model. So definitely take a look at it. And bonus tip, right? Leverage the experts. There's other people in the community, in the ecosystem who have gone down this path with Data Cloud. It is an extremely rapidly evolving product. The last technical deep dive for the release, it was three 2-hour deep dives, right? A lot of changes in the platform. They're making it more robust, more feature rich. So, find someone else who's in the Data Cloud ecosystem who can help either guide you or, do some of this work for you so that you can find the most success with it. If you're interested in learning more about Data Cloud, there is a lot of resources that are available. There's some that are, self-learning through Trailhead, and there's videos. If you're a Salesforce partner, there's lots of really good content in the partner portal. They just recently moved some of that partner content to Trailhead as part of making the certification open. But there's a lot of really good information, like not just Trailheads and things like that, but workbooks and guides, and a lot of really good resources to get you going if you decide to go with it on the solo side. For those trailblazers among us, right, there's Trailhead, there's the community, there's a couple of community groups that are Data Cloud specific. There are expert coaching sessions by Salesforce. They have support office hours, and then we have some other resources here too. They'll all be shared in the slides that I think come out later. I don't know those details, but that'll be available to everyone after. And that's it. Thank you for sticking around. Hopefully either you were able to stay awake or you have enough time to wake up until your next session. Looks like we have a few minutes for Q&A. I don't know, looking at the app here, I'm not seeing any questions, but if anyone has some, I'm happy to answer. Otherwise, I think we have 1 or 2 sessions left in the conference before it's the weekend, and time to relax. All right.
So yeah, thanks, Adam. I was like, yeah, there's no questions in there, so take a few minutes before your next session, everyone, and enjoy that break and have a good weekend.
All right. See you, everybody.